Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and to a brand new video. Today we're going to be doing my January reading wrap up. So in January I read a total of 13 books. You can see most of them stacked here and I wanted to talk them through with you today. This year I'm going for quality over quantity, and also a lot of the books I read, which are really short novellas, I'm no longer counting this year on my Goodreads. I'm just putting them on my spreadsheet. So I have actually read something like 17 books this month, but I'll only be counting 13 of them. Let's dive straight into it because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings and my wrap-ups are always so long. And as you can see, there's some chunky books down here. Spoiler alert, you will be getting my feelings for the new House of Flame and Shadow at the end of the video, so stick around. First book I read was The Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This is a cozy fantasy romance. We follow Mika, who is a witch. It is based on Earth, and witches are not exposed to human beings. They're keeping themselves very secret. But Mika does present as a witch on TikTok, and obviously people seem to think it's fake, as people do. So she gets to like live her true life talking about witchcraft with people, but they think it's not real. But one day she gets contacted by this group of people who would like her help and believe she's a witch. And she's like, no, I'm not a witch, no. But then ends up moving in to nanny these 3 kids who are actually witches and need help kind of learning how to hone their witchcraft. While she is at this house, she meets Jamie, who is kind of like the guardian to the children in a way. And he doesn't really trust Mika. He doesn't really want her there. Doesn't want her around the kids. But eventually he kind of gets used to her, you know. It's a romance. It's very sweet. This I gave a 4 stars. This was so cute and sweet and very cozy. The way I would describe this is like a magical warm hug. It was so sweet. And I just loved the found family aspect and the friendships that were formed in this story. They were so lovable. The kids were so sweet. And I loved that they all had very different personalities and everybody in the house had a really different personality. And the relationships that Mika formed with them all was really nice to read about. I loved the way that it was written. Like the atmosphere was built so well in this story. For example, Mika like sleeps in an attic room with this little balcony and it's just so atmospheric. Like everything is described really well. You could picture it so beautifully. And there's descriptions such as like the bubbling cauldron. It gives me life. He keeps making potions. It's just so beautiful. And I feel like if you like witchcraft, this is one that just works so well. And even though it's a romance or has romance in it, there's more storylines to it. There's a little bit of a tiny bit of a mystery. I just really enjoyed this. It was such an easy read. I definitely trust Sangu Mandana now to write something amazing and cozy and sweet. And I cannot wait for her next book. The Magical Innkeeping or something. I talked about it in my anticipated reads video. I'm so excited because this did not let me down. I'm so happy I read this and I definitely recommend for those of you who like a low stakes, cozy, sweet story. Next I read Christmas in Quincy. This is just a super short novella to kind of introduce you to the Edens series. The Eden series is a small town romance series set in the town where the Edens run it, and the Edens are a family. And Christmas in Quincy follows 2 people who are not in any way involved in the Edens family, but they kind of go visit the village and meet some of the Eden characters and kind of give you a really sweet, quick introduction before you dive into the series. I thought this did exactly what it was meant to do and I really enjoyed it for that reason. I gave it 3 stars. It was an enjoyable novella, not very memorable, but I don't think that was the point of it. It was kind of just an easy way to get yourself into the series and it did that for me. I read the next book, so I had a really good time with it. I like the descriptions of things. I've noticed that Devney Perry's writing, she manages to make you feel there, if that makes sense. Like at one point they were baking cookies or something and I felt there and I felt like I could smell the cookies. It was very descriptive and very well told. The couple were very cringy, especially at the end. I was completely cringed out. But considering it not really about the couple, it was more about like the building of the town and, as I said, introducing you to some of these characters. I thought it was good for that purpose. I enjoyed it, and it did intrigue me enough to go into the series, so can't complain about that. If you're going to start the Eden series, I would say this is a fun way to start it, but not in any way necessary. Next, I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. I was fully expecting to go into this book expecting the synopsis to be misleading. I was expecting her to move in with this roommate and he'd be like up late at night or very mysterious, and therefore she thought he was a vampire, but he wasn't. No, this man is a vampire. This man is 100% a vampire, and I was so shocked. Title gave it away, but I really didn't think it was real. We follow Cassie, who's kind of having a hard time of it. She's an artist and needs to find somewhere to live, but everywhere is super expensive. So when she finds an ad listing for like $200 rent by this man called Frederick, she's like, what the heck is going on? But she goes to visit it even though it seems too good to be true, and she meets Frederick, who is a very peculiar sort of man, very eccentric, dressed in his old-timey outfits and speaks a little bit funny. But she decides the rent price is too good to be true and she moves in, and we kind of just watch a little bit of a romance blossom. We watch her teach him how to fit into modern day society, and we uncover a little bit more about him as a character and I guess his lore. It's nothing too deep. This is definitely romance through and through, not fantasy, but it was a really sweet touch and something I've not really read before in this way. It was a very fun rom-com, but with a paranormal twist. It was very interesting. I did give it a 3.5, which means I did really enjoy it, but the reason that it didn't hit a 4 for me was that because it was very cringe at times. Some of the way they spoke did have me, you know, gritting my teeth like, oh my god. Also, TikTok is mentioned so much in this book, it's unbelievable. And I don't like that. I don't know why. For me, that just dates a book. I love TikTok, but I don't want it in my books. And I also found that the third act drama, which by the way was not a breakup, which I loved. I hate third act drama breakups. But the third act drama in this was so weird. So strange. I was baffled. I was like, I don't understand where this came from in this funny little rom-com. But who am I to judge? But I did have a really good time. It was a super easy read. I was warped into the story and I enjoyed meeting our characters, and I think I'd probably reread it for a good time in the future. But yeah, he is actually a vampire. I was just as shocked as you. Although none of you are probably shocked because it does say he's a vampire. I just clearly have trust issues. Next, I read Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates, which is Darcy Coates' newest YA release. We follow our main character Abby, but also her tight-knit group of friends in this small town where a killer has been on the loose, taking children for many, many years, and all the adults just kind of don't talk about it, ignore it. I'm gonna start by saying, because it was obvious from that synopsis, this is exactly the same as It by Stephen King. I've never read the book, but specifically the movies, the remakes, uncanny how alike these are. But I absolutely love those movies. The remakes are some of my favourite movies ever, so I was kind of like guaranteed to like this because it was just another way of consuming that very similar media, and I did and really, really enjoy it. So there's this presence slash man slash person, whatever you want to call it, you uncover more through the book, who has been kind of stealing children, and their bodies have been turning up very badly mauled and like put back together with red string, sometimes combined with other people's body parts. It's very gruesome for YA. This is not young YA. This is very graphic, older YA, but I really liked it for that because that is exactly what I wanted. I have read some books from Darcy Coates that I have been absolutely obsessed with, mostly her paranormal house stories, and others that I've not really loved. And reading this synopsis, I kind of expected this to be the latter, but I was so blown away by this story. I gave it 4 stars. I want a physical copy so bad for my shelves because this is definitely one I want to reread. It was so interesting. Firstly, the camaraderie between this friendship group and the way that they had each other's backs was so sweet. Like, it just reminded me of being young and having like that really cute friendship group that you'd go like on mysteries with. Like, you know, and you'd meet up on the street, you know, you'd be playing in the streets. And you just have a really good time coming up with like theories for things that were so not dramatic. This obviously was dramatic, there is a killer on the loose, but you know what I mean? Like, it did give me a bit of nostalgia for those times. And also I found that they were not really that annoying. Like, I often find young protagonists to be really stupid in books like these. I'm like, what kind of decisions are you making? And don't get me wrong, there were some things that me as an adult would not do. Anybody with a couple of brain cells probably wouldn't do. But it was nowhere near as bad as the other books I've read. They did not annoy me at all. I really liked Abby and all of her friends. It was a really enjoyable time while actually being really scary. There is one scene, I won't describe it too much, but her mum is on a wardrobe. If you've read it, you'll know. If you haven't, you need to read it. I had goosebumps. I have goosebumps thinking about that scene. It made me feel really unsettled. It was really strange, very fun, very reminiscent of Darcy Coates' writing, which I think is incredible. So I would 100% recommend this. The more I talk about it, the more I think a 4-star was kind of harsh. Maybe I should have gone for more of a 4.5. I just really, really enjoyed this story. And again, I can't wait to own it physically. I definitely recommend this one. So as I kind of said earlier, I did read Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. This is the first full-length novel in the Eden's series. This one was super interesting, because not only is it a romance, which was okay, I enjoyed the romance, it is also a murder mystery. So in this story, we feature the first of the Edens to be coupled up, I guess, and that is Griffin. He meets Winslow when she moves to town to take over the job as like chief of the police. And that is how you end up getting this murder mystery, because she is a detective. She has to solve a murder after a young girl's body is found. So this is a very weird mix of small town cutesy fun romance and quite a dark murder mystery. Like, there are some dark themes. There were some trigger warnings for the mystery part of this story that I would definitely recommend checking out. But I really enjoyed it. Like, I think for me, if it had just been a romance, this would have been a 3. It wouldn't have stood out to me very much. I enjoyed Griffin and Winslow's story. I enjoyed some of their romantic moments, but my favourite moments were uncovering this mystery. I didn't try too hard to figure it out or anything, and I don't think I did have a hint as to who it was, but I don't think it would be that hard to figure out either. Like, if I'd been trying to think about it, I think I could have. But I just enjoyed it for what it was, and I really hope that the other books in this series come with another element to them. Maybe not a murder mystery, but I hope it's more than just a simple romance. I haven't read any more of the series, but I have got most of them now on my Kindle because I'm so excited to continue with them, because I enjoyed them so much. So if you have not started the Eden series, I would definitely recommend at least picking up the first one for that murder mystery alone, because it was just very interesting to me. Next we have another Darcy Coates, and that is The Haunting of Gillespie House. I took this with me to Centre Parks because I really wanted some sort of like creepy horror read to read while in the woods. And this one was very, very fun. I must say that the book is only about half of this, and then there are 3 short stories in the back, so I will give you a brief rundown on those as well because I read them all. This one follows Elle, who is house sitting for the Gillespies while they go away for a little trip, bit of couples therapy, you know. And while she's there, she starts to uncover some very creepy scratching in the wall, and then finds out more about the family and how the Gillespies' daughter was missing, or has been missing for a very long time, and they never found her. And so Elle kind of goes on accidentally finding things out about this story. I guess she does put her nose a little bit into places that it does not belong. But yeah, it's a really fun short mystery. As I said, it's only about 130 pages. Yeah, it's 130 pages, so it is a super short, fast-paced one. I don't have too much to say. I really enjoyed the mystery. It has like a cult aspect, which I really enjoyed, and is very different to Darcy Coates' other haunted house novels I've read so far, while also getting that gritty, dark, creepy writing style that Darcy Coates always gives. As I said, there are 3 short stories in the back. The first one, In Bed and Breakfast, very spooky, creepy. If you're interested in reading this, you can actually read it for free if you sign up to Darcy Coates' newsletter. I give this one a 3.5 stars. The second is Crawl Space, which I found enjoyable, but I felt like it was left a little bit unfinished. I gave that a 3. And my favourite one of the lot was Lights Out, which was a creepy mannequin story, and boy was that creepy and scary. I gave that a 4. And I don't think I said overall I gave Haunting of Gillespie House a 4 stars. I think it really packed a punch for its very short word count. But yeah, overall, even the short stories, I really enjoyed reading this. I'm really glad I took it with me on holiday. And yeah, I definitely recommend this if you've been a lover of Darcy Coates' other paranormal stories. Next, I read Not So Lucky by Trelina Pucci. I read Tangled in Tinsel maybe 2 years ago now and really, really enjoyed it. I actually gave it 5 stars. I thoroughly had a great time. So this one to me was kind of a given 5 stars. Like, I really thought there wasn't really any question about it. It was going to be a fun, steamy romance I'd love just as much as the first one. Absolutely not. I can't remember the characters' names, but this book is pitched as a woman who gets married to a man and then is shared with his 2 best friends. It's a steamy romance, but it's not that at all. You actually find out that happened before the book starts, and then the book starts after that happens, so the morning after. So you don't even get that steamy scene. And that's kind of the only fun steamy scene. Like, they do not... The rest of the series are those other men finding romances. So kind of false advertising then, isn't it? Because you're really just following a bog standard romance. That's it. It is a regular romance between a man and a woman, and that is purely it. Sometimes she flirts with the other men to make him jealous, and I guess there's one steamy scene between the 3 or 4 of them, between the 4 of them, but you do not get that initial scene. So already off the bat I was like, I'm so confused by where this is going to go, because the synopsis has already happened. But yeah, they get a divorce. Well, they try and get a divorce or an annulment, and they get ordered to live together in Vegas for 30 days before they can get divorced. They live together. It's very bland. They have 0 chemistry. I did not have a good time. I gave it 2 stars because, I mean, nothing happened that I hated, but nothing happened that I like. So I don't recommend, unfortunately. It has been a few years, as I said, since I read Tangled in Tinsel. So maybe I liked it more at the time because I hadn't read a lot of spicy romances. But I liked that a lot more than this from what I remember. And yeah, I'm very disappointed in this. I don't think it was very good at all, and I'm very upset and let down. Trying to find something that would curb that missing feeling that I didn't get from Not So Lucky, I picked up House Rules, which I didn't know what this was about. I'd seen it on the best list of Kindle Unlimited romances or something. This is not a romance. This is not a romance. This is a very steamy novel about a woman who basically goes to a breeding camp with their whole purpose. They get paid a lot of money to go and have a baby. Not for me. Not for me. I didn't rate this because I didn't think it was fair, considering I did not do the I guess, research into what this was about. I just trusted the Kindle Unlimited romance list on TikTok when I shouldn't have. I did finish it, and I was very confused by the end. I'm not sure if this is meant to be like the lead up to a series. Like, maybe this is a prologue, because the ending was very weird and things happened that were never explained. Like, there was like some beef between the 2 guys, like the best friends. They had some sort of falling out and I don't understand why. Yeah, I don't really know what was going on, but I didn't rate it because that was my own fault for not knowing what I was going into. But I am not into pregnancy or anything like that. So yeah, moving swiftly on. Next, I picked up Credence by Penelope Douglas. This is a reread for me. Actually, there's quite a few rereads coming up. I had a reread heavy month. This is my 4th reread of this story. I absolutely loved this book. I read it for the first time in 2020 or 2021, and I reread it 3 times in the same month because I absolutely loved it. So I reread it thinking I'm going to see what I loved about it. And I did like change, like I re-annotated and tabbed my book. And I was reading it in the forest, so it was really good setting. I'm not changing my rating from a 5-star. However, I'm very, very much acknowledging that if I had read this now, this would not be getting a 5-star, because I don't know if I've like matured or something, but this is problematic. And I don't mean the fact that like this is a taboo story. This is obviously problematic. If you don't know what it's about Tiernan, whose parents die, and she has no living relatives that she's aware of, except a man rings her and is like, I am actually your uncle, step uncle. We've never met because we've been completely estranged as families. But you're a few weeks off your 18th birthday. If you want to come live with me so you're not on your own, I have your 2 cousins here. We'd be happy to take you in for a bit, you know, let us know what you want. And she's like, that's a really nice option. She's famous and she doesn't want to be famous. Like, she's living under her parents' light, I guess. So she goes to this middle of nowhere mountain in the snow where they get snowed in for months at a time. And she's like, yeah, I'll go there for a break. Then ends up pursuing romances with all 3 of them. So obviously very problematic as a whole. Even though they did not know each other and they weren't like proper family, it's still problematic. That does not bother me. It's a taboo romance. Don't read it if you don't like taboo romances. That's how I see that. Fine. But there are some things in this book that I literally was annotating, and I would write, oh my god, what the heck? Or ew. Or I can't believe this was actually written. There were so many things in this book that were like brushed off, and they are so wrong. And I don't know how I didn't pick up, or maybe I did pick it up, but I just don't remember picking it up in my first few reads. So I'm not saying I recommend it, but it is a very fun, funky time. But it is also for a specific audience. My favourite thing about this book is the atmosphere. As I said, you're literally in this cabin, really big cabin, at the top of this snowy mountain where when the winter months come, they get snowed in and they cannot leave for months. So they have to like fend for themselves. So they have to go like hunting, they grow their own food, they can and jar their food. She kind of gets into designing and decorating furniture, like redoing the furniture that she finds around the house. I just thought it was such an interesting story in terms of the plot, with a really weird spicy plotline put into it as well. I don't like the way this book ends. I never did. I always hated the way it ends. But it is a very interesting story. I'm glad I reread it because I had a very fun time rereading it and laughing at myself for what I must have liked back then. But it was a fun reread. I'm glad I did it. I don't know what came over me this month. I rarely ever reread. I love to reread, but because I have so many books on my TBR and so many books and coming out all the time, there's like a pressure. Like, I don't feel like there's time to reread. This month I just seem to let that all go and just reread everything, because my next book was the reread of Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is the first book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I read this in April last year. And it's just been traditionally published, so I picked up a physical copy and I read it. I can't say I noticed any differences to the self-published edition because it's been a year since I read it, but I stick with my 4.5 rating. I had a wonderful time with this. We follow Araya, who is a human being who's been raised by the Vampire King, and he enters her into this Hunger Games-esque tournament where she meets Rain, who is a vampire, and they kind of have to band together for the group trial. So yeah, as I said, it is like Hunger Games but with vampires, and it's very dark and atmospheric and broody. I really like the writing style and the world building and the setup in this novel. I don't love the end. That's why it doesn't have a 5-star. I don't like the way it took a turn. I have not read the sequel as a result, but I will be reading the sequel in the coming weeks, I'm sure. I just want to know what happens, and that is why I reread this. Now that I have a physical copy, I just fancied doing so. Look how stunning this is, though. Wow. So yeah, I 100% recommend this. I think it is a great start to a fantasy romance series, and I'm really excited to continue on with it. I have no idea where it's going to go, but I cannot wait to find out. I think if you're someone who likes trials in your fantasy, this is going to be one you're really going to like. 100% recommend. And the final stack I will be talking to you about is the Crescent City series. As you probably know if you're on the internet at all, we had the release of House of Flame and Shadow this month, or in January. It's February now. And as I said, I did finish this in February, so I'm kind of lying to you because I did finish it in February, but I want to talk about it here while my thoughts are fresh and while I'm talking about the other two because I reread them in January. Firstly, we have House of Earth and Blood. This is my favourite book ever. Top #1 spot of any book I've ever read. I absolutely love this book. We follow Bryce Quinlan, who is this party girl living in Crescent City until one day her life changes. Then we flash forward a few years later when she is asked to assist with the investigation of some murders that happened, and so her and her newly assigned bodyguard hunt Athalar, an angel who is being kept as a slave from the rebellion. They kind of work together to try and solve this murder. This is such a fun fantasy. I don't want this, not a fantasy romance. There is a lot of romance, but it is a high fantasy story with an urban setting. So many different types of fantasy folk are in this series. You know, mer people and vampires and werewolves and shifters and fae. There's so many things in this world. This series is absolutely crazy. I love this book. The reread stood up again. I've read this now 4 times and every time it has been absolutely incredible. I have loved my experience. These have my favourite characters of any series in them. I think it is written phenomenally. This is my favourite book in the series, but this is also my favourite series ever. 100% recommend. If you have not read this, I cannot recommend you to pick this up enough. It is so intimidating. The size of it is so intimidating, but it is worth every second. There is so much world building in here though, because the whole series, the world building is incredible. Like, it never stops. The whole series is just constant information, which can get so overwhelming at times. But I just love how much depth there is in this series. I feel like I know this like the back of my hand, and I couldn't be happier about it. This was the best reread I ever, and I'm really glad I did it, and I had a wonderful time, and it improved my mental health. Then I moved on to the second book, House of Sky and Breath. This, for me, when I first read it, was a big disappointment. This was my first time rereading it. I gave it 4 stars, but I had such high expectations after the first book being my favourite book that it was obviously a letdown for me. But I did, in this reread, acknowledge the fact that I liked it a lot more than I thought. My issue is that the plot takes a dip. Like, I think the plot is not very good in regards to what I would have chosen. I always describe it as, it's quite clear to me that Sarah J Maas had these 2 books and the rest of her books planned out many years in advance. She clearly had it written down to a T what she wanted, and I think that she realised that in these 2 books she needed a book beforehand to set up the world and set up our characters, and therefore came up with a story to put into here. I think she added that story later on, whereas that is my favourite story. That is the story I want, whereas it kind of takes a turn here. I see the setup in there and I see how she got to this, but I see storylines in there I would have much rather have indulged more into rather than this more rebellion type story. But I can acknowledge that it is brilliantly written. I love the even more world building we get. The character development, the cast of characters is so vast and you get to know them so well. Like, I feel like nobody is truly left 2D. Everybody's really well explored. No surprise, because you get a lot of page count to do it. Then we had the most exciting release of the last 2 years for me, and that is House of Flame and Shadow. This is the 3rd book in Crescent City, and like a final book in what we've had so far, but we are getting more Crescent City books with a different kind of story arc following some of the other characters we've seen and loved. But this is the final kind of installment on the storyline we've had so far, following Bryce and Hunt, and I gave it a 4 stars. I think I liked it more than House of Sky and Breath, but nowhere near as much as the first one because I absolutely love that story. This, for me, was a brilliant exploration of the families, the friendships we've seen bond and grow throughout this trilogy. The way that they stick together and have each other's backs is incredible. Without going into spoilers, obviously, the things that Sarah J. Maas has done and planned for this series, and the way things link, and the way that things have been foreshadowed for so long, is so impressive. I give it to her that her mind is incredible, and the way that she has explored things that I could never even imagine, amazing. 10 out of 10. My gripe with this is there is so much information. So much information. And there will just be a character relaying this information for you in long, long passages. My brain became mush. My brain is still mush thinking about it. I feel fried. Truly mentally fried. Trying to even think or comprehend what has happened. And I think it's going to take so many rereads for it to all fully sink in. But in regards to the storyline, I like where it went. I expected a little bit darker and grittier by the end, but throughout the story, it was very dark. I didn't expect it to be so unrounded at the end, but I like where everything went. I'm very happy with it. I'm happy with the information we received. So I did really enjoy it. I just, again, those long spouts of information are so overwhelming, and I would love to have had them in more bite-sized chunks. I guess you couldn't really show and not tell as much as I would have wanted, but a little bit less telling and a little bit more showing would have gone a really long way. Because it's a long book. A lot of this is just someone telling you past information about what happened. And I was like, oh my god. I do think because of the clear setup for other characters' stories to continue in other books, we kind of missed the mark a little bit on our main couple, Bryce and Hunt. Like, I did like the way we explored them, and I liked the exploration of the side characters, because they, for me, are what make this series incredible. But I do feel we just had a little too much on characters that didn't need to be focused on as heavily. Even characters I absolutely loved. Like, for example, there's a really big Ethan storyline in here, and it was too much for me. I love Ethan, but it was too much. We went too far, and I was like, ugh, please. So, absolutely loved it. 4 stars, but it has the same issues that I had with House of Sky and Breath. This is definitely solidifying House of Earth and Blood as my favourite book of all time, not just in this series. But I will say, what I find interesting is that ACOTAR had all 5 stars from me, except for the first book, which is a 4-star. Except I think I'm probably going to up it to a 5, which means it had 5 5-star books. Meanwhile, Crescent City only had 1 and then 2 4-stars. But I think Crescent City is my favourite series by her, and probably my favourite series ever. The way that it is written and the characters are developed and the storyline and the setting, everything about it is absolutely incredible and immense. And I don't for a second put that down, because I could never write something as complex as this. And I don't want to shade on it in any way, because I absolutely adore it. I think if it was any other book, it would be getting a 5 stars. It's purely the fact it's trying to compete with a favourite book of mine. It just doesn't work in my head to give it 5 when the first one is like a 10-star. Those are all my thoughts and feelings on House of Flame and Shadow, even though I couldn't really say much because of spoilers. I have so many theories. I have a notes app in my phone with so many theories, or just things that I think were odes to other things that she has talked about. Again, it's just really hard to talk about without spoilers. I'd love to do a spoilery review, but I just cannot comprehend half the stuff that happened, and I feel like there are people out there with much more comprehensive thoughts and ramblings than me. So I guess this is what you're going to get. But I had a good time. My brain needs a couple of days to recover, and then I'm going to be back on my reading grind. I'm excited to read other things. I was definitely in a fantasy kick, as you can tell. I think I need a break. I think this book has like fried my fantasy brain. I need some other genres for a little bit before I return. Not only is my brain now mush, my mouth is also now mush. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below what your favourite read of January was, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye!